Hello and welcome back. I just spent 4 days in Strasbourg, France, and in this video I'll share my impressions and talk about my stay there so that you too can plan a trip to Strasbourg. I'll talk about why I chose this destination, how easy it was to get here, and my thoughts on the neighborhood that I stayed in. I'll also break down the cost of living, safety, local highlights, and talk about some day trips that you can take from Strasbourg. Plus, I'll rate the area based on key criteria, and I'll reveal exactly how much I spent during my stay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kyria, and over the last 25 years, I've traveled to almost 60 countries. I recently quit my job to travel the world full-time, and one of my favorite things to do is to travel, to talk about travel, and to learn about travel from others. So let's get started. I chose Strasbourg because I always wanted to see the Alsace region, which is known for its half-timbered houses and tumultuous past. Plus, I have a soft spot in my heart for France ever since I lived and worked in Bordeaux for a summer, but this region was one I hadn't been to before. Strasbourg has a rich past dating back to its Celtic origins in 1300 BC, and since then, it's cycled through Roman fortifications, Frankish rule, and its time as a free city in the Holy Roman Empire. Over the last centuries, it's cycled back and forth between French and German rule, the most recent liberation being in 1944. Today, Strasbourg stands as a symbol of European unity and is the home to the European Parliament and the Council of Europe. It is known for its medieval architecture, its vibrant cultural scene, and its interesting Alsatian cuisine, which is different than your typical French food. To enter France with a US passport, you do not need to do anything in advance at this moment, and it is part of the Schengen zone, so you can stay in it for 90 out of every 180 days. However, there's been talk that they're going to start a new application process called the ETIAS in mid-2025. However, they've been talking about this for a little while and it's been postponed a few times, so we'll see what happens. To get to Strasbourg from Germany, I took the train. It did involve 4 different trains and 3 different connections, which sounds complicated, but actually wasn't as bad as you might think. Of the 4 that I took, 1 had assigned seating, and I was actually unable to pre-reserve a seat on that train. However, I didn't have an issue getting a seat in the end. A little tip about that is above each seat on the train, there should be a little tag, and the tag will say whether or not the seat is occupied, and some of them are electronic, so it'll actually tell you where the person is coming from and going to. So if it has that, that means it's pre-reserved even if no one's in the seat, but if it doesn't have that, then probably that seat is available. Another tip I have about taking the train in Germany and France is that when you're standing on the platform, there will be a TV that has the announcement of the train, but it also has a little map of each of the train cars on it with the numbers of the cars and then the letter of the area of the platform that you would stand on if you needed to get on that car. So if you do reserve a seat in advance, it will tell you what car you're in, and then you just need to look at the TV monitor and it'll show you where that car is going to stop on the platform so you know where you need to stand. The other tip I got was from locals because I asked them what I was supposed to do, and they said that in their experience, if you don't have a reserved seat already, you're more likely to be able to get a seat if you go to the front of the train. So that's what I did, and I ended up getting a seat. Another thing was that on my 4th train, there was a platform that I had to wait at for about 20 minutes and it was raining and it didn't have a actual covering. So just be aware that some of the stations aren't inside, and so just make sure that your luggage is sufficiently waterproofed. You can also get to Strasbourg very easily on the train from other European cities. The train system in France is called the SNCF, and their high-speed train is called the TGV, and the TGV goes to many, many destinations. For example, you can get to Paris in about 2 hours, Zurich in about 3 hours, or Munich in about 4 hours. You can also fly into Strasbourg and take the train into the center of town, which is also using the SNCF, but in this case, it's the local version, which is the TER. That train takes about a half an hour and costs about $4. You can buy the tickets online at the SNCF website or on the platform. And if you buy them online, you can actually download them onto your Google Wallet without having to actually download the app itself. I found this is kind of nice because sometimes if you're moving around really quickly, you don't want to have to download every single different provider's app. And so in this case, you just can do it on the website, not the app, and then just download it to your Google Wallet and it's no problem. You can also book through the Trainline app, which it aggregates all the different companies together. Even if you don't book through them, it's kind of nice to have the app because it gives you kind of a more comprehensive view of all the different companies that you could use. As far as getting around is very easy. Like I said, you can use the TER trains, and that's fairly simple. You can just buy those tickets online. There's also lots of buses and a light rail in town. However, I ended up just walking around because it's such a easy city to walk around that I never ended up needing to ride any of the transportation. I used my phone to tap to pay with no issues. However, one time I tried to tap to pay with my American Express and it declined it, but if you put your card into the chip reader, it will allow it at that point. So I'm not sure why it does that, but that's a little quirk that it might have. I don't know if it's American Express, but it did work when I used the chip reader. My other tip would be just to carry around a little bit of cash because, again, just like in Germany, if you need to use the bathroom, sometimes you have to pay. So it's nice to have a 50 cent or a €1 coin on hand. And then the other thing is, if you go into a boulangerie and you buy a baguette, a lot of times those are like €1. And so I kind of hate paying €1 with my card. So it's nice to have a little bit of cash just in case for the little things like that. Also, as a side note, for the free walking tour, it is expected that you tip. You don't have to tip, but you probably should tip. And that's usually cash as well. As far as my lodging, I booked a Holiday Inn, which was about a 2.5 mile walk from the main train station, about a 1 mile walk from the train station that I came in on, and about a 1 mile walk from the downtown area. I actually really enjoyed this location because I wasn't right in the middle of all the touristy stuff, but I was close enough that I could easily walk. I booked my hotel using points, but when I booked it, I did look into all the other options before I ended up booking with points. And if I would have paid for this hotel in cash, it would be $127 a night. Also, I looked into Airbnbs and the average price for the ones I was looking at was about $100 a night for a 4-night stay. However, if you're going to stay for a month, you can find an Airbnb in the summertime for approximately $1,600 to $1,800, or in the wintertime for approximately $1,400 to $1,600 in the city center. Or if you're willing to go a little farther afield or get a studio instead of a 1-bedroom, you can find some that are around $1,200. And if you're looking to stay more long-term than that, I found a furnished rental on the site Morning Croissant for about $800 to $1,200 a month, depending on location. I'm going to talk about the water feature, the walking, and the neighborhood all in one go because it kind of all ties together. So as far as water goes, Strasbourg sits right on the Ile River, and also there's a series of canals around the city as well. So you're not too far away from water no matter what. The good thing about this is there are walking paths on nearly all of them. So you could walk miles and miles or kilometers and kilometers on these walking paths near the canal, and it's very scenic and very easy, and a lot of them go under the streets so you don't even have to cross the street, which is really nice. Also, it's just really fun to walk around the town because there's a lot of little tiny streets that you don't even think are streets, and then they end up being streets that go through to a different place or a little hidden square or something like that. So there are both walking paths and also just fun places to walk around. As far as green spaces, there are plenty of those. I actually didn't go far enough out to see them, but I really did enjoy just walking around the canals, and they go literally for miles. One of the places I didn't end up going because it was raining and snowing a lot of the time was the Orangery, which is a park that got some really good reviews, and I had wanted to see it, but I didn't get a chance to go. As far as cycling, I did not cycle here, but everyone cycled. I mean, it would be literally 6 o'clock in the morning, it would still be dark, and I could see out the window of my hotel because I had a view of the bike path. I could just see bikes going by one by one by one. People with kids, I mean, everything. It was great. I mean, in one day it even snowed, and that didn't stop anybody. So it's definitely a biking culture. The funny thing is my tour guide actually told me that they have lots of bike infrastructure in France, but that nobody follows any rules. So it's a little bit willy-nilly. And I did notice that because sometimes you're walking on the sidewalk and a bike will go past you. And sometimes it's a busy sidewalk and a bike will go past you. So it seems like that they just kind of go wherever they want, but I don't really know what the rules are. So who knows, maybe that's allowed. As far as accessibility, if you have accessibility issues, there may be some streets that will be a little bit of an issue due to cobblestones. There's also a few stairs here and there, but I did notice some ramps, but a lot of the sidewalks are also very narrow. Now it's time to talk about concerns. So the first one I'll talk about is safety. I did not feel unsafe at all while walking around by myself in the dark, in the rain, in the snow, no problem. According to Numbeo, the crime index in Strasbourg is around 40. And for this statistic, lower is better. And the safety index is 59. And in this case, higher is better. So it's not the most safe or the least amount of crime, but it isn't too bad. As far as being a solo traveler, I didn't feel unsafe about that in any way. And as far as going out for food or anything like that and feeling uncomfortable, and I went out for lunch by myself and didn't feel uncomfortable at all about that either. For language, you can definitely get by with English, as reportedly over 50% of people in Strasbourg speak some English. And if you stay in the touristy areas, you definitely won't have a problem But I do think it's important to learn a few phrases such as, do you speak English? Thank you, and un pain au chocolat. As far as cultural differences go, the bike thing was a little bit weird for me, and then most of the other ones I had been familiar with already. But in case you're not, here's a few examples. First of all, if you're eating a pizza, most Europeans eat it with a knife and fork. So if you're eating it with your fingers, they're gonna know definitely that you're not from there. The other thing they do is that they hold their knife and fork in their hands all the time. When I was growing up, we were always taught to set our utensils down in between every bite, but it's very common in Europe for people to hold them and cut them and use the fork to eat and hold the knife in the other hand at the same time and not put it down or anything. So you'll see that the utensils are in their hands the whole time. The other thing is that you will often get bottled water when you ask for water, but you can ask for tap water. The bottled water will cost you about $3 or $4 and the tap water is free, but they will bring a bottle if you don't ask for tap water. So if you want tap water, you need to ask for tap water. The next one, and this is very common in many places in Europe, and that is if you don't ask for the check, they will let you sit at your table forever. Of course, the first time you come to Europe, you probably think that they're being rude, but they're not being rude. They're just letting you sit and enjoy your meal or your coffee or whatever. So it isn't rude for you to ask for your check or to flag them down or to even wave them down very, enthusiastically. The other thing you can always do is the universal sign for check. You just have to catch their eye, and sometimes you need to wave them down. Actually, a funny story, I was in Mendoza, Argentina, and I was eating outside in a place, and they kind of have the same way of doing things. They don't really just rush to bring you the check like you might find in the US. And the guy next to me, at the table next to me, he raised up his arm and he kept snapping at the waiter, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is so rude. But in some places it's not, because you have to get their attention. So you do you. I don't think I'm gonna do that, but you do notice things like that are a little bit different in other places. So as far as weather, I was in Strasbourg in January and it was in the 20s and 30s, and it even rained and snowed a lot of the time. However, as far as I can tell, this is a little colder than the normal average, as the normal average low is around 35 degrees. And then if you come in the hottest month, which is July, the weather is approximately 58 to 75 degrees. As far as access to medical care, I didn't need to go, but France does have excellent medical care. When I was living in Bordeaux, I did have to go, and it was easy to get in. The doctor was very nice. He spoke English, and I don't think it even cost me very much. As far as food and water safety goes, there are no issues in Strasbourg. There is a U.S. consulate in Strasbourg, as well as 38 different embassies and consulates from other countries. When it comes to grocery shopping, there's plenty of options. Two of the big ones are Carrefour and Auchan, and I only went to Auchan, so here are a few of the prices for the items that you can find there. Apples were $1.40 a pound, a half of a baguette was 60 cents, half gallon of milk was $2.39, half gallon of ice cream, $2.36, a dozen eggs was $3.35, a pound of oranges was 84 cents, a pound of butter was $6.09, a pound of ground beef was $4.68, and my favorite, a pound of cheese, was $2.92. Gotta love that French cheese. As far as eating out goes, I went for lunch, and my meal plus a glass of wine cost about $21. A 12-ounce beer would be about $5.41, and a 6-ounce glass of wine would be about $5.12. So what is there to do in Strasbourg? Well, you've probably seen the pictures of the half-timbered houses with the canal and the reflection and everything. The Pont Couvert, which is covered bridges, date back to the 13th century and were used as a defense system for the city. Petite France is a neighborhood with half-timbered houses along the canal, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Place Kléber is the main square, and in it you can find shopping and, right now, a large Christmas tree. Also, when it's Christmas time, the square transforms into one of the oldest and most famous Christmas markets in Europe. And last but not least, the Notre Dame Cathedral, which took almost 400 years to build, is an eclectic mix of Romanesque and Gothic architecture. And a fun fact, until the 19th century, it was actually the tallest building in the world. I also did a free walking tour, which was very informative. I can link the company in the description below. And I didn't do any day trips because it rained and snowed the whole time, but I really did want to go to Colmar, the village of Colmar, which is about half an hour from Strasbourg on the train. There are a ton of Alsatian dishes that you will probably want to try while you're there, but one that I can definitely recommend is the Flammkuchen, or tarte flambée, which is basically like a flatbread pizza, and you can get it as a half order or a whole order, and I ordered a whole order. It was a little bit too much for me. So a half order is about €6. Plus, of course, you have to try the local wine. Okay, so now we're to my favorite part again, which is how much did it cost? So I have a few disclaimers to go over before I talk about how much it costs. First of all, I booked my hotel using points, and I only had an $8 resort fee on top of the points. Second of all, my hotel had breakfast, and so I would use that breakfast as my one big meal, and then I would eat a second smaller meal later in the day. But basically I only ate 2 meals per day, one being the breakfast from the hotel. Thirdly, a lot of the attractions and entertainment for me was free because it was essentially just walking around and looking at things. So if you're willing to do that, you can keep your costs down a lot. And fourthly, this was one of my first stops after leaving the US, and so I had this bag full of snacks that I was trying to use up. So I did kind of dip into that bag a little bit to supplement my food that I ate. Also, one of the things I did want to do but didn't end up doing was to go inside the cathedral, and the line was just too long. It was really, really long. So basically, if you want to do that, it may make sense to try to get there really early so you can be first in line. Okay, so what did I spend? For accommodation, like I said, I spent $8. For dining out, which was one lunch out and then various pastries, I spent $24. For entertainment, I spent $10, which was the walking tour. For groceries, I spent $8. For transportation, which is my train to get to Strasbourg, I spent $65. And last but not least, my fixed costs were $55. This includes my health insurance, phone, credit card fees, and any other thing that I pay for by the month or by the year. I just prorate that out, and this is what it costs for 4 days of that. So the total that I spent for the 4 days in Strasbourg was $169, which is approximately $42 per day. Like I said, this is a little bit lower than it would have been if I would have paid for the hotel. That would have been closer to $170 a day. And the last thing, which I know you're dying to find out, is could I live here or stay for a longer time? And I think the answer to that is yes. As I said, I stayed in a part of town that wasn't right in the thick of the tourist area, but it was close enough to walk around and go downtown if I wanted to. I really liked that. I love the walkability. I love the ease of public transportation. I love the beauty of the town. And I really liked the running and bike paths along the canal. For me, that thing that really checks my boxes is, can I be active in this place? And the answer to that is yes. However, living here in the summer might be a bit of a problem, as I'm sure it is just full of tourists. So maybe you have to do a reverse snowboard or something. But I could definitely live here for a few months or maybe even longer. So tell me, have you ever been to Strasbourg? What did you think? Is there anything here that I missed? And if you found this video helpful, you should also watch this video where I talk about my time in Germany. And also in my next video, I will be talking about the time that I spent in Dijon. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, please subscribe so you don't miss it. As always, thank you for watching and happy travels. Hello and welcome back. I just spent 4 days in Strasbourg and I'm here. Hello and welcome back. I just spent 4 days in Strasbourg, and in this video, I'm going to talk about